The stars had never looked so cold. Admiral Aura stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Silence, and watched his fleet move into position. 500 warships, the largest force the Galactic Conclave had assembled in 10,000 years. Each vessel was a mountain of metal and fire, built to break worlds and silence civilizations. Today, they would silence humanity. The blue planet called Earth hung in the distance like a jewel against black velvet. Aura had studied this world for many years. He knew its history. He knew how humans had crawled out of their caves and built cities. He knew how they had reached for the stars with nothing but fire and dreams. He knew how they had spread across 40 worlds in just 300 years. And he knew why the Conclave feared them. Humans did not know how to surrender. In every war they had fought since joining the galactic community, they had won. Not because they were stronger, not because their technology was better. They won because they simply refused to lose. They would burn their own ships before letting enemies capture them. They would fight with broken weapons and bleeding hands. They would die standing rather than live kneeling. The Conclave had watched this small species rise, and they had grown afraid. The order had come down from the highest council chambers. Humanity was too dangerous. Their growth was too fast. Their spirit was too wild. If left alone, they would one day challenge the old powers. They would upset the balance that had kept peace for. Better to end them now, while it was still possible. Aura felt no pleasure in this mission. He was a soldier, not a butcher, but he understood necessity. Sometimes a fire had to be put out before it burned down the forest. Sometimes a weed had to be pulled before it choked the garden. Humanity was that fire, that weed. His communications officer turned to face him. "Admiral, the humans have received our transmission. They are responding." "Show me," Aura commanded. The main screen flickered, and a human face appeared. It was a woman with dark skin and silver hair. Her eyes were hard as stone. Behind her stood military officers in crisp uniforms, their faces showing nothing but controlled anger. "I am President of the United Earth Government," the woman said. "You have entered our space with weapons armed. Explain yourself." Aura stepped forward. "President, I am Admiral Aura of the Dominion Fleet, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Conclave. The Council has reviewed humanity's expansion and military activities. They have reached a decision." He paused. The next words tasted bitter in his mouth. "Humanity is hereby ordered to surrender unconditionally. You will dismantle your fleet. You will abandon all colonies beyond your home system. You will accept permanent observation and control by Conclave forces. If you refuse, your species will be eliminated. You have 12 hours to comply." The president's expression did not change. "And if we fight?" Aura gestured at his fleet through the viewport. "You have 40 warships, President. I have 500. Each of my vessels outguns your entire fleet. There will be no fight. There will only be death." President leaned forward. Her voice dropped to something quiet and dangerous. "Admiral, my people have a saying. It goes like this: everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You should remember that." The transmission ended. Aura stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then he turned to his officers. "Begin the countdown. In 12 hours we attack." On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. People gathered in the streets, staring up at the sky as if they could see the enemy fleet waiting beyond the clouds. Parents held their children close. Lovers whispered promises they might not keep. Old soldiers dug out uniforms they had hoped never to wear again. In the military command center beneath Geneva, President met with her admirals and generals. The room was tense. Everyone knew the numbers. Everyone knew what they meant. Admiral Wei, commander of Earth's defense fleet, stood before a holographic display. Red dots showed the enemy positions. Blue dots showed humanity's forces. The difference was almost laughable. "Our 40 ships against their 500, Wei said quietly. Even if every one of our vessels destroyed 10 of theirs, we would still lose. Can we evacuate? Asked one of the generals. Wei shook his head. They have the system surrounded. No ship can escape without being destroyed. They have planned this well. President sat in silence, her fingers pressed together. What about our colonies? Can they send help? They have their own problems, another admiral replied. The Conclave has positioned smaller fleets near each of our colonies. If they try to send ships here, their own worlds will be attacked. We are alone. The room fell into heavy silence. Wei looked at his president. What are your orders, ma'am? Closed her eyes. She thought of her playing in the garden of her home. She thought of the billions of people counting on her to save them. She thought of 300 years of human expansion, human achievement, human dreams. She thought of surrender. And then she pushed that thought away. We fight, she said. We fight because that is who we are. We fight because our ancestors fought against odds just as terrible. We fight because if we die, we will die as humans, not as slaves. She stood up. Admiral, take the fleet to Mars. Form a defensive line. Make them pay for every inch of space they take. Wei saluted. Yes, ma'am. As the officers filed out to prepare for battle, President walked to the window. The sun was setting over Geneva, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. It was beautiful. She wondered if she would ever see another sunset. Somewhere out there, 500 warships waited to delete her species from existence. But humanity had faced extinction before. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that had nearly destroyed civilization. They had always found a way. Perhaps they would find a way again. Or perhaps this was the end. Only time would tell. And time was running out. The hours passed like drops of blood from a wound. Admiral Wei stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Rising Sun, and watched his small fleet take position near Mars. 40 ships, 40 brave crews, 40 captains who knew they were about to die. He had sent messages to each of them. He had told them how proud he was. He had told them that their names would be remembered forever. He had not told them what he truly felt, which was a deep and terrible sadness. Around him, the bridge crew worked in quiet efficiency. They checked weapons. They ran diagnostics. They prepared for a battle they could not win. No one spoke of fear. No one spoke of death, but everyone thought of home. Wei thought of his daughter. She was 7 years old. He had promised to teach her how to fish this summer. He had promised to take her to the mountains. Now he would never see her grow up. He would never walk her down the aisle. He would never hold his. He pushed these thoughts away. There was no room for grief, not yet. Admiral, his sensor officer called out, I am detecting something strange. Wei turned. What is it? A ship has dropped out of faster-than-light travel beyond Neptune. It is alone. Its transponder is not working. Wei frowned. One of ours. I do not think so, sir. The energy signature is wrong, too old, like nothing in our database. Put it on screen. The main display changed. Against the backdrop of distant stars, a single ship drifted slowly toward the inner system. It was small compared to the alien warships. Its hull was covered in strange scars and burn marks. Parts of it looked like they had been repaired 100 times with whatever materials were available. It looked like a ghost. Wei stared at the image. Something about the ship's shape was familiar. Something about its design tugged at memories he could not quite reach. Run identification, he ordered. The computer took several minutes. When the results appeared, Wei felt his heart stop. That is impossible, he whispered. The ship was the UES Defiance. The Defiance had been one of the first human warships to travel faster than light. 200 years ago, during the First Contact War, it had been sent on a desperate mission behind enemy lines. The goal was to destroy a critical supply station. The crew knew they would probably not return. They never did. The Defiance had become a legend. Songs were written about her. Movies were made. Children learned her story in school. Captain James and his crew of 3,000 were heroes, saints, martyrs. Their sacrifice had helped turn the tide of that ancient war. But they were supposed to be dead. They had been dead for 2 centuries. "Sir," the communications officer said, her voice shaking, "the ship is hailing us. They are using old military codes, codes that have not been used in 200 years. "Open a channel," Wei said. The screen flickered. Static filled the display. Then slowly an image formed. It was an old man. His hair was white. His face was covered in wrinkles and scars. He wore a uniform that belonged in a museum, but his eyes were sharp and clear and full of fire. Wei recognized him from the history books. "This is Captain James of the United Earth ship Defiance," the old man said. "We have been traveling for a very long time. We are requesting permission to come home." Wei could not speak. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Around him, bridge officers stared at the screen in disbelief. Some had tears in their eyes. Some were praying. Some simply could not understand what they were seeing. "Captain," Wei finally managed. You have been gone for 200 years. We thought you were dead. Everyone thought you were dead." The old captain smiled. It was a tired smile full of pain and memory. "We nearly were, Admiral, many times, but we had a mission to complete. We had a home to protect." "A mission? But the war ended 200 years ago. The enemy surrendered." "I know," said. "We received the news eventually. But by then we had found something else, something important, something that told us Earth would need us again someday." Wei leaned forward. "What did you find?" Before could answer, alarms began screaming throughout the bridge. The sensor officer shouted a warning. "Admiral, the alien fleet is moving. They are advancing toward Earth." Wei looked at the tactical display. The 500 enemy warships had begun their approach. They moved in perfect formation, like a wave of death rolling toward the blue planet. They are not waiting for the deadline, Wei realized. They are attacking now. He turned back to the screen. Captain was watching him calmly. "Captain, I do not know how you survived or what you found out there, but right now we are about to be destroyed. 500 warships against 40. We cannot win. Your ship is old and damaged. You should run while you still can." Shook his head slowly. "Admiral, my crew and I have been running for 200 years. We have crossed distances you cannot imagine. We have seen wonders and horrors beyond description. We did all of this for one reason, to protect Earth, to protect humanity." He straightened in his chair. His old bones seemed to find new strength. "We did not come all this way to run now. We came to fight." Wei stared at the old captain. "One ship against 500. What can you possibly do?" Captain James, 200 years old and tired beyond words, looked at the approaching enemy fleet, and he smiled. "Admiral, let me show you what we found in the darkness between stars." The Defiance moved through space like a wounded animal that refused to die. Her engines coughed and stuttered. Her hull groaned with every maneuver. Lights flickered in her corridors. But still she flew, carried forward by the will of her crew and the weight of their mission. Captain James sat in his command chair and watched Earth grow larger on the screen. He had dreamed of this moment for 200 years. He had dreamed of blue oceans and green forests. He had dreamed of rain on his face and grass beneath his feet. He had dreamed of home. Now home was about to be destroyed. "Captain," his first officer said. She was a woman named Sarah, great-grandmother now though she had been a young lieutenant when they left Earth. "The alien fleet has detected us. They are scanning our ship." Nodded. "Let them scan. They will not understand what they see." Around him, his bridge crew worked at their stations. They were old, all of them. The youngest was 140 years old. They had spent their lives aboard this ship, maintaining it, repairing it, keeping it alive through sheer determination. Of the 3,000 who had left Earth, only 847 remained. The others had died over the long years, some from accidents, some from sickness, some from old age. They were buried in the cold void between stars, their bodies released into the endless dark. But those who survived had found something extraordinary. 50 years into their journey, lost and low on supplies, they had stumbled upon a region of space that no map showed. The stars there were old and dying. The planets were cold and empty. But on one of those dead worlds they found ruins. Ancient ruins. Ruins older than any civilization the galaxy had ever known. The architects had built them. Every species in the galaxy knew the legend of the architects. They were the first intelligent beings to arise after the universe was born. They had seeded life across 1,000 worlds. They had built wonders that later species could not understand. And then, millions of years ago, they had vanished without explanation. Most believed the architects were a myth, a story told to children, a dream of a golden age that never existed. But his crew had walked through their cities. They had touched their machines. They had learned their secrets. And they had taken some of those secrets with them. "Captain," Sarah reported, "the enemy fleet is hailing us." "Let me hear it." Admiral Aura's voice filled the bridge. It was cold and dismissive. "Unknown human vessel, you are ordered to stand down immediately. Your ship is irrelevant. Your weapons are primitive. Do not interfere with Conclave business and we may allow you to live." Pressed a button on his chair. "Admiral Aura, this is Captain James of the UES Defiance. I understand that you plan to destroy humanity today." There was a pause, then Aura responded. "That is correct. The Conclave has decided that your species is a threat. You will be eliminated." "I see." His voice was calm. "Admiral, I have been protecting humanity for 200 years. I have crossed the galaxy. I have seen things that would break your mind. I have sacrificed everything I ever had. I am very old. I am very tired, but I am not finished yet." He leaned forward. "I am asking you, one soldier to another, to turn your fleet around. Go back to the Conclave. Tell them that humanity will not be destroyed today. Tell them to find another way." Aura laughed. The sound was harsh and cruel. "One ship against 500. Old man, you are insane. Your vessel is falling apart. My sensors show hull breaches and failing systems throughout your ship. What can you possibly do?" Smiled. "Let me show you." He turned to his weapons officer. "Lieutenant, activate the gift." The old man at the weapons station nodded. His fingers danced across controls that had been modified and rebuilt 1,000 times. Deep within the Defiance, ancient systems came to life. The ship began to change. Aura watched his sensors with growing confusion. The human vessel was emitting energy patterns he had never seen before. Its hull seemed to shimmer and shift. Strange lights danced across its surface. "What is happening?" he demanded. None of his officers could answer. On the Defiance, felt the familiar vibration as the architect technology activated. The systems they had recovered from those ancient ruins had taken decades to understand. They had lost many crew members learning to use them. But now, finally, after 200 years, they were ready. The ship's shields expanded outward in patterns that normal physics. Her weapons powered up with energies that belonged to a civilization dead for millions of years. Her engines, once crude and failing, now hummed with power that could move stars. The Defiance was no longer a broken warship. She was something else entirely. Opened a channel to Earth. He wanted them to hear this. He wanted them to know. 200 years ago, I left Earth with 3,000 brave souls. We were sent to die so that humanity might live, but we did not die. We wandered the darkness between stars. We found the ruins of the architects. We learned their secrets. We made their technology our own. His voice grew stronger. We have returned home. We have not forgotten our mission. We have not forgotten our people, and we will not let you destroy what we have spent 200 years protecting." He stood up from his chair, bones aching, heart pounding. "Admiral Aura, I give you one final warning. Leave this system. Leave humanity alone, or I will show you why the architects once ruled the galaxy." The transmission ended. Aura stared at his screen, his confidence suddenly uncertain. The human ship hung in space before him, glowing with impossible light. For the first time in his long career, the Admiral felt afraid. Admiral Aura was not a foolish commander. He had fought in dozens of campaigns. He had destroyed rebellions and conquered worlds. He knew when to be cautious and when to be bold. But he also knew that he could not show weakness. The conclave was watching. His officers were watching. If he retreated from one old ship, no matter how strange it seemed, his reputation would be destroyed. "All ships," he commanded, "open fire on the human vessel, destroy it." 500 warships obeyed. The darkness of space lit up with weapons fire. Beams of energy and waves of missiles streaked toward the Defiance from every direction. It was enough firepower to crack a planet. Nothing could survive such an assault. The attack struck the Defiance, and nothing happened. The energy beams hit a barrier that should not exist and simply stopped. The missiles approached and dissolved into dust. The ancient ship sat unmoved in the center of the storm, surrounded by light but completely untouched. Aura's officers began to shout in confusion. Their instruments made no sense. The readings were impossible. The human ship should be debris by now. "Increase power," Aura ordered. "All weapons to maximum." The fleet fired again, and again, and again. Each assault was more powerful than the last. Each assault failed completely. On the Defiance, Captain watched the attacks wash against his shields like waves against stone. The architect technology was working perfectly. 200 years of study, 200 years of sacrifice, all for this moment. "They cannot hurt us," Sarah said quietly. "No," agreed, "but they will not stop trying. They are too proud, too afraid," he sighed. "It is time to show them what we can do." He turned to his weapons officer. "Lieutenant, target the 3 destroyers on our port side. Fire 1 shot." The old lieutenant nodded. His hands moved across the controls with the precision of 2 centuries of practice. The Defiance fired. A single beam of white light lanced across space. It struck the first destroyer and the ship simply vanished. Not exploded, not destroyed, vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, as if it had never existed at all. The beam continued. It hit the second destroyer, gone, the third, gone. Silence filled the Dominion fleet. Aura stared at the empty space where 3 of his ships had been. 3,000 crew members, 3 powerful warships, erased in a heartbeat by a single shot from an ancient human vessel. "What was that?" he whispered. No one could answer. Opened a channel to the Dominion flagship. "Admiral, you have seen what I can do. Those ships are not destroyed. They have been sent somewhere else, far across the galaxy. Their crews are alive, but they will never find their way back. I can do the same to your entire fleet." He paused. "I do not want to. I am tired of death. I have seen too much of it. For 200 years I have watched my friends and family die one by one in the cold darkness of space. I have buried more people than you can imagine. I want this to end. I want to go home and rest." His voice grew heavy with emotion. "We came back to Earth to protect it. We did not come back to kill. But if you force me, Admiral, I will erase your entire fleet from existence. Every single ship, every single crew member, gone in the blink of an eye." He leaned forward. "Is that what you want? Is that what the Conclave wants? To lose 500 warships and 500,000 soldiers for nothing?" Aura felt sweat running down his face. His hands were shaking. This was not how the battle was supposed to go. They were supposed to crush the humans easily. They were supposed to return home as heroes. Instead, they were facing extinction. "I need time," he said finally. "I must contact the Conclave." "You have 5 minutes," replied. "Then I will assume you have chosen to continue fighting." The channel closed. On his flagship, Aura tried to reach the Conclave leaders, but communication across such distances was slow. There would be no guidance from above. The decision was his alone. His officers looked at him with fear in their eyes. They had all seen what happened to those 3 destroyers. They did not want to share their fate. "Admiral," one of them said carefully, "perhaps we should withdraw. We can return with more ships, with better weapons." Aura turned on him angrily. "And tell the Conclave what? That we ran from one old ship. Better to run than to die, sir." The Admiral looked around his bridge. He saw fear everywhere, fear and doubt. His fleet had come here expecting an easy victory. Now they faced an enemy they could not understand. Pride warred with survival in his heart. Pride won. "We will not retreat," he declared. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel, every weapon, every missile, everything at once. No ship can withstand the combined power of 500 warships, not even one with alien technology." The fleet responded. Every vessel turned toward the Defiance. Every weapon system charged to full power. The largest combined assault in galactic history was about to be unleashed. Aura smiled grimly. "Fire." Space itself seemed to scream as 500 warships fired simultaneously. A wall of destruction swept toward the Defiance, bright enough to blind stars. On his ancient ship, Captain watched the approaching wave of death with sad eyes. "They chose poorly," he said quietly. He turned to his crew. These brave souls who had followed him across the galaxy, who had given their entire lives to this mission, who had never stopped believing that one day they would save their home. "My friends," he said, "it is time, let us end this." The Defiance began to glow. Ancient systems hummed with power. And as the enemy fire approached, the old warship prepared to show the galaxy what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. The combined firepower of 500 warships struck the Defiance like the fist of an angry god. For one terrible moment, the ancient ship disappeared behind a wall of fire and light. Every sensor in the human fleet went blind. Every person watching held their breath. Then the fire faded. The Defiance remained. Her shields blazed with impossible light, but she was untouched. The greatest assault the Dominion had ever launched had failed completely. And now it was her turn. Captain gave the order, "All weapons fire at will." The Defiance unleashed the full power of the architects. Beams of white light swept across the enemy formation. Each beam touched a ship, and that ship simply ceased to exist, sent somewhere else, somewhere far away, somewhere they would never return from. The first 10 ships vanished in seconds. Then 20. Then 50. Panic erupted across the Dominion fleet. Ships began breaking formation, trying to escape the terrible light. But the Defiance was everywhere at once, her weapons finding targets with perfect accuracy. Admiral Aura screamed orders that no one obeyed. His officers were running for escape pods. His crew was abandoning their stations. The mighty Dominion fleet was falling apart before his eyes. On the rising sun, Admiral Wei watched in disbelief. He had prepared himself to die today. He had said goodbye to his family. Now he was watching one old ship tear apart the largest fleet in galactic history. "Is this really happening?" one of his officers whispered. Wei could only nod. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it ended, 312 Dominion warships had been sent across the galaxy, their crews alive but lost forever. The remaining ships had scattered into faster-than-light travel, running for their lives. The Defiance hung alone in the void, surrounded by empty space where an armada had been. But victory had come at a cost. The ancient ship was dying. 200 years of wear and damage had finally caught up with her. The architect's systems had kept her alive through the battle, but now they were failing. Hull breaches opened across her frame. Power systems collapsed one by one. The lights in her corridors flickered and went dark. On the bridge, Captain felt his ship shuddering beneath him. Warning alarms filled the air. His crew worked desperately to maintain critical systems, but everyone knew the truth. The Defiance had given everything she had. There was nothing left. Sarah said softly to his first officer, "Send a message to Earth. Tell them we need help." Within minutes, rescue ships were launching from Earth and Mars. The entire human fleet moved to assist the ancient vessel that had saved them all. Watched Earth fill his blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "We made it," he whispered. Tears rolled down his weathered cheeks. "After all this time, we finally made it home." Around him, his crew was crying and laughing and hugging each other. 847 survivors of a 2-century journey, old men and women who had given their entire lives for this moment. The rescue ships arrived and began evacuating the crew. One by one, the survivors of the Defiance were carried to safety. Medical teams worked to treat their various ailments. Counselors prepared to help them adjust to a world that had changed completely since they left. Refused to leave until every member of his crew was safely off the ship. He walked through the empty corridors of the Defiance one last time, running his hand along the walls that had been his home for 200 years. "Thank you, old girl," he said quietly. "Thank you for carrying us home." The ship groaned in response, as if she understood. Finally, he boarded the last rescue shuttle. As it pulled away, he watched the Defiance through the window. The ancient warship was breaking apart now, her hull collapsing, her systems finally giving out completely. She died in Earth's orbit, surrounded by the world she had spent 2 centuries protecting. It was thought a good death. Hours later, a shuttle carrying Captain James landed in Geneva. A crowd had gathered. Thousands of people who wanted to see the legendary captain with their own eyes. President herself was waiting. The shuttle door opened. Stepped out slowly, supported by 2 medical officers. He was 247 years old. His body was broken by time and hardship. But when he saw Earth's sun shining on his face, when he smelled Earth's air for the first time in 2 centuries, he smiled. He gently pushed away the officers supporting him. He walked on his own 2 feet to a patch of grass near the landing pad. And there, in front of thousands of watching eyes and millions more watching on screens across the planet, Captain James knelt down. He pressed his hands into the soil of Earth. He felt the grass between his fingers. He felt the warmth of the sun on his back. He felt the planet he had spent his entire life protecting. And he wept. The crowd was silent. This moment was too sacred for applause, too important for celebration. They simply watched as an old man, finally home after the longest journey in human history, cried tears of joy into Earth's soil. President approached him slowly. She knelt beside him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Captain," she said gently, "on behalf of all humanity, thank you. Thank you for never giving up. Thank you for coming home." Looked up at her. His eyes were red, but his smile was radiant. "We made a promise," he said. 200 years ago, we promised to protect Earth. We promised to come home someday." He looked around at the blue sky, the green grass, the thousands of faces watching him. "We always keep our promises." The story of the Defiance spread across the galaxy. The Conclave never threatened humanity again. Other species learned the lesson that Admiral Aura had learned too late. Humans never give up. Humans protect their own. Humans endure. And somewhere in the soil of Geneva, in a small garden built to honor the crew of the Defiance, a stone marker carries a simple message. They crossed the darkness to bring us light. They never stopped. They never forgot. They came home. Humanity endures. Always.